First Things First is sponsored by Ram Trucks, built to serve.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. Jenna Wolf, Nick Wright, Brandon Marshall, looking dapper, my friend.
Kevin, how do I get my hair
Wild.
like that, Kevin?
Lovely. No, it's not on purpose.
Great.
It's just it's an accident.
It just happens and just rolls out of bed that way. Gentlemen, it is Veterans Day, and today we do give our thanks to those who serve and those who have served, and we have a fantastic show for you today. Tons of stuff to get to, and we are going to start this morning in Dallas with the Cowboys.
What?
Boys find themselves at a surprising 2-7 on the year. The team some had a good shot of making the Super Bowl. Instead, they got a good shot to land a top 3 draft pick. And if that's the case, could they, should they, would they consider drafting a new quarterback? Here's Jerry Jones on that very topic.
Is it crazy to bring up the idea of taking a quarterback with the 3rd pick or the 2nd pick, if you may have it?
Yes. You asked me if it's crazy to bring the idea up, and I'm answering you, yes. We're playing games here, guys, but it's not the thing to be talking about at all. You know, Dak is our quarterback.
You know, the one thing, Nick, you've been on this corner since before we even started talking about Dak's contract. The Cowboys say too much, too early, too soon. They never wait. And yet, once again, Jerry Jones comes out and says, it's Dak, and that's it. Let's move on. But, Brandon, let me start with you first. Should the Cowboys maybe be open to drafting a quarterback? Should the opportunity present itself in the draft this year?
I had the same reaction that Jerry did. Absolutely not. They have their quarterback. That would be crazy. You have your guy. Nick, I had 18 quarterbacks, so maybe it's because of my experience in the NFL playing with so many quarterbacks. Some of them were good, some of them weren't really good. For that reason, when you find a guy, you stay with him. You're in love with him, keep him, make it work. So a lot of people out there are talking about his ankle. Well, I had seven surgeries, and I was still able to make 6 Pro Bowls and play 13 years at a high level. So this is inevitable in the NFL. Guys are going to get injured. So if the goal is to win now, then you double down on Dak Prescott. He was averaging, 400-something yards through the air before he got injured. He just had to clean up the turnovers. So for that reason, you double down on it because you're Jerry Jones. You're looking at your age like, I'm 78. Look, I'm trying to win right now. I don't have, another, 60 years to get this done. So you got to double down on Dak Prescott right now, Nick.
So here's the problem. And this isn't about Dak's ankle, and it's not about Dak's ability. It's about the finite nature of resources in the NFL and how to best spend those resources. I would argue the Cowboys have to be open to any and all possibilities that would allow them to address their gaping hole on their team, which is their defense, and they have to look around the NFL landscape, recognize you can win at the highest levels in the NFL in this generation with a young quarterback, with a quarterback on a rookie contract. And that doesn't mean you go out of your way to move Dak Prescott, but it does mean that if you end up with the 2nd overall pick, which they could, and Justin Fields is there, and you would have the ability of saving $40 million against the cap for the rookie contract compared to Dak's new deal, which is pending, and get, I believe, a couple 1st-round picks by trading Dak, you at least have to have those conversations. And Wilds, even if inside the building you have decided we don't love any of these quarterbacks aside from Trevor Lawrence, they're not going to be able to get him, there is no chance we're drafting one. To Jenna's point, you don't say it out loud, because if you do end up with the 2nd pick, you want someone, if you're not going to take a quarterback, to trade you for that pick so you can get extra resources. If the whole world knows you're out of the quarterback business, then they'll be trying to trade with the team with the 3rd pick instead of you. So there's no reason to say this, and Wilds, there's no reason to be this close-minded about it.
Okay, are you the same guy that lambasted the Packers for taking Jordan Love? Like, the idea that you're going to move off of a franchise quarterback is bonkers to me. And I don't think that, like, the GM pipeline or the GM listening pipeline is necessarily watching First Things First or all these shows. Like, they know it. They know that Jerry Jones is in love with Dak. He would do more harm in saying anything other than it's crazy. It's obvious Dak's our guy.
Yep.
So
yeah,
let me.
look,
can I just throw something out?
Real quick,
Brandon, go ahead, Nick, and then I'll jump in. Go ahead.
Just you use the Packers example. If the Packers were coming off an awful season, drafted Jordan Love and traded Aaron Rodgers, that is a totally different universe than coming off 13-3 NFC Championship game, draft Jordan Love and keep Aaron Rodgers. So to me, those are, Jenna, those, just to respond, those weren't apples to apples comparisons. The Packers tried a half measure, and half measures are almost always the wrong way to go. Sorry to interrupt you, Jenna. Go ahead.
No, of course. But, Brandon, let me ask you this. We keep talking about how in love Jerry Jones is with Dak Prescott. Jerry Jones has had the last 3 years to sign Dak Prescott. If he was so in love with him, if he was so willing to just pour all this money into their future, this deal would have gotten done. It was over an extra year. Jerry Jones would have said, you're my guy, let's do it. So I find it hard to believe that he's so tied into Dak Prescott that he's like, no matter what happens now, he's our guy. He had his guy. He could have been signed, locked up, and finished already.
Jerry Jones is in love with a lot of people in that locker room, but Jerry Jones is also one of the most savviest businessmen out there. That's why he owns the Dallas Cowboys. That's why his team is worth more than any other team in the NFL. Jerry Jones knows he has the leverage. If the deal wasn't right, if it wasn't sweet, he knew he could lock him up for the next 2 years. Franchise tag this year, franchise tag next year, if they wanted to do it. Now, that would really hit the cap hard, but he know he had that out there. Nick, I just don't understand how you would even have the conversation of moving off Dak, because you can build your defense in the draft. You can build your defense in free agency. And then also, when you made a good point when you talked about, not saying it, because if you land the number 2 overall pick and you know you're going to keep Dak, then you can use that as leverage to have a team come up and trade for that pick and move back. But the problem is this. If you don't answer that question correctly, Dak Prescott and his agency will be calling you asking for answers. So as an owner, as a head coach, you have to do a good job in the media when you have those type of tough questions.
That's totally fair, and you maybe would just need back channel with Dak's people saying, you're going to hear a lot of stuff about us being interested in a quarterback. It's all subterfuge because we're trying to trade the pick. Pay attention to none of it. But listen, I whiffed on the Cowboys this year. But Jenna, my final point would be this. I believe what we've seen from the Cowboys as far as coaching-wise and defensively, that if they had Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback this year, they're not a championship caliber team because the defense is so incompetent. If that's the position you're in, then you have to look for any and all avenues to address the defense. And yes, the draft will be there, but free agency will not be there, Jenna, if they sign Dak, because they're already up against the cap, and then it'd be $40 million per on their quarterback.
That's a great point, Nick. All right, we got to take a turn because of the highlight of all highlights, a classic from Masters practice yesterday. John Rahm on 16. The time-honored tradition of trying to skip the ball across the water onto the green. Perfect skipping across the water. But how perfect is this? How perfect is that?
It's about to stop.
Nick, what would you call this?
Stop.
Would this be skill or would this be luck, buddy? Oh!
I would call this the greatest play in the history of sports. I think this is the greatest highlight.